Hi, I'm Carolyn. And I'm Bethany. And we are
Sisters in Song. We cannot believe that it is our 100th episode of Sisters in Song.
I never believed we would get this far.
No.
Especially when they were telling us about the 20 people who get to 20 episodes.
It wasn't just the people, it was Jesse Rubin, our guest, who told us about that.
That's so crazy.
We've made it to 80 more episodes after that. Jesse, what do you think about that?
100 episodes.
It's pretty dang awesome. So,
well, first off, we want to give a really big shout out to Stacey Lauren, who got us started in this because we found a online, I think it was on Facebook.
You found.
Yeah.
And then you invited me.
Call to start your own podcast, which was called Do the Thing.
Yeah.
And it was we had a couple of online classes teaching us how to do it, how to not be scared.
Because it's Stacey Lauren's Do the Thing podcast, right? So that
yes.
she does several challenges, but we got involved in the Do the Thing, Start Your Own podcast.
And it has been an absolute,
oh my gosh,
riot. Yes. And a roller coaster and so much fun.
It's really been a roller coaster.
No, just fun. So I think it's a roller coaster.
All right.
In a good way.
I suppose.
Not a bad. Not bad. Well, it kind of started out as a roller coaster when we first started, and it was going to be all about ourselves, and it was going to be about our songwriting process and what we were doing. And
we were kind of like,
right?
Besides us?
Yes. And so then we kind of molted off into morphed into a new thing where we decided to talk to songwriters themselves, people who are already out there. I mean, not that we're not songwriters, but that people are already out there and actually like playing and recording and touring and all of that stuff in real life as their actual careers, which to us it's a hobby and a fun kind of dream thing.
And
together.
I mean, that was one of the challenges too, was to interview someone.
Yes.
So our first interview was with TBD from Denver and John Tatey. And we have that episode published, but it is very hard to hear because at that point we have no idea what we were doing. We had this microphone that was, I'm not kidding. Well, if you're just listening in, it was probably like 2 inches.
Yeah.
It's this tiniest microphone. I call it the world's tiniest microphone. And it did not record everyone's voice.
No.
So,
and we were at Red Rocks outside with the crowd waiting to get into the Avett Brothers. Loud. People were playing music. People were talking, and you know, so bad environment.
Tailgating.
Yeah. Bad environment to try and do our very first podcast interview.
Yeah.
So, but it was a really fun interview, and sadly, it did not turn out. But maybe we'll be getting those guys back on.
Yes,
we'll ask them. They're awesome.
Ned, Steve,
guys want to be back on? Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. So thanks to Stacey from Do the Thing.
Yes.
Because that's how we kept going. And now we're on 100 episodes, which is awesome.
Yes, we are. So I wish I could narrow it down to say what my favorite episode will be, but there were so many. We've had so many good guests, and I've loved everyone for different reasons. Like everyone's insight has been amazing. Everyone has just been like, we've not talked to anyone mean. Not that I expected that we would, but like everyone was super friendly and just like very informative. So
willing to share their stories and their origin stories and when they started music, telling us all about, giving advice to people and to our listeners, to us. And I feel like I've learned so much cool stuff from the variety of people we've had on. I can't pick a favorite episode either because each one has its own little favorite thing.
Me too.
From it.
Yeah. And every time like I'm listening and editing, I'm like, oh, I forgot they said this, and it's so great. So it's always fun to go back and listen and edit, even though it takes me forever. So guests, we appreciate your patience.
Yes, we do. We do.
So thinking of variety, we have had so many people that have called in from various places. Some noted ones, some fun ones. Will Wesley. We'll show a little snippet here of the following people. Will Wesley, who called in from the road. And we had Wyatt Ellis, who called in from his house. And then we've had, I could go on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But then also a little snippet here of Dan Sharp, who called us from Australia, where he was on a writing retreat.
Yeah, so we've had people from all over the globe, and looking forward to having even more. We also got to do awesome things ourselves by meeting people at Americana Fest last year in September, and also flew to Montreal and met people at the Folk Alliance.
Yes. So we have been lucky enough to have all of the most amazing guests, like I just said, but we have had people call in from some of the like furthest places, some of the closest places. We've had some Omaha people, we've had some Lincoln people, and we're going to look at a few snippets here. One of them is Will Wesley, who called into us from the road. And tonight we have a very special guest. We have Will Wesley coming to us from where? Tell us where you're coming to us from.
I'm in the middle of nowhere right now, girls. It's good to be on your show, though. I'm actually on the road heading home from Nashville. I just had a performance at the CMA Theater, and I was at for the Josie Awards. I was nominated for a few awards over there, and I got to driving, and I started timing it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna miss the podcast. I was like, Bethany and Carolyn are gonna kill me. So I was like, you know what? Coffee shop it is. So I'm sitting in a cafe here to do the interview. It's good to see you girls. Y'all look great.
Wow, great to have you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's right.
And we also had our youngest guest, Wyatt Ellis, who we met at Americana Fest real briefly, but then he came to us working on the family farm to take some time to chat with us.
Yeah, tell us where you're coming to us from.
I'm coming to you from Maryville, Tennessee.
Awesome. Very cool. Is that close to Nashville, or how far are you?
It's close to Knoxville, actually, kind of looking over the Great Smoky Mountains.
Ooh, how cool. Lovely. I'll bet you have a beautiful view.
I do.
Yes. And then we also had our New Zealander, Dan Sharp, who actually called us from Australia after we figured out the time difference, which took us several times.
Several attempts.
Not math people.
No, and thank you, Dan, for being so patient with us about that.
Yeah. And he called us from Australia, but he was on like his own writing retreat, which was amazing.
I'm going to do a writing retreat in Australia.
We're going to do a writing retreat in Australia.
We're totally.
We need a benefactor.
Yeah.
Anyone out there?
Anyone
want to be our benefactor?
We need some supporters. I mean, not supporters. Sponsors. We need sponsors.
Anyway, the other thing I was going to say about Dan is that we met him through another podcast, Dantime Podcast. So shout out to them for sending us some really good Dans to talk to.
Very cool. Dan, we've had a few Dans.
Dan Slotnick, Dan Sharp, Dan Brody, and I'm sure we'll have some more Dans coming down the road.
Welcome, Dans.
And everyone else.
Well, we had a little struggle getting together because of the massive time difference that we have.
Yes.
So we are so happy to welcome you, and tell us where you're coming to us from right now.
I'm currently in Melbourne, Australia. I'm from New Zealand, but I'm over here for 3 weeks doing some songwriting and working on the next project, which is exciting. Just got here 2 days ago.
Okay, on our podcast, we have been able to listen to a lot of people's origin stories, which has been so neat to see. Not only where they started, but the names of their bands sometimes were pretty funny and pretty cool how they came about.
Yes.
But we've been able to hear how some people on our show became a group, and where they really started, like the Wildwoods from Lincoln, Nebraska, who actually met in junior high.
I know, it's a super cute story. We're going to show it to you now. How did y'all get together as a group?
You want to?
So, back at the end of middle school, Chloe and I met, and we met through some mutual friends, and all three of us actually grew up going to small Catholic grade and middle schools where our mothers taught. And so, Chloe went to one school, I went to another, and so we didn't know each other through that up until towards the end of, I guess, 8th grade. And then some of our friends, had made friends from the other schools, and there was some sort of backyard birthday party going down, and Chloe was in the next backyard over with this group of cathedral kids, but I was with the martyrs kids. So, we were
this is very 8th grade.
Oh yeah, we're like, oh, what are all these cathedral kids doing in this neighborhood or something like that? I don't remember. But then I met Chloe. Somebody told me she was a musician, and since our schools were kind of small, there weren't a lot of musicians in our classes, I guess. And so just hearing that she played music, I was like, oh, I play music as well. We should play music together. And so I got her phone number, and we started texting back and forth, and we started meeting up and playing some tunes, and here we are 11 years later. So
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we
Okay.
actually found out that we lived in the same neighborhood growing up. But we went to separate schools because our moms each taught at different schools. So we were like basically neighbors most of our lives, and we didn't even realize it until we finally met.
yeah.
And then we met Andy when we went to high school. We did show choir together.
And we also got to hear how Claire Bowen and Brandon Robert Young became the iconic duo Bowen Young, which was super fun.
Very cool.
And
Very cool.
And here they are.
Thing I was going to talk about is that Claire has her own musical debut album, and Brandon also has his own solo stuff, which is fantastic. And we hope to hear that more out when you're together too. Is that something that you plan to do? And along with that, how did you kind of evolve into becoming a songwriting duo?
Oh gosh, yes, we love all of the old songs, and there are songs that we wrote ages ago as solo artists that we haven't played live ever. When you're releasing a record, they always want you to play what's on the record.
Yep, fair enough.
It's been really nice though. Like you play the same songs for a really long time, and that's why you should always write what you would like to hear if you're going to be the one singing them. But I guess we got to writing. We were meant to write together first, and then you got called in to sing with me at the Bridgestone.
Yes.
That's how we started writing together.
Mm-hmm.
I will always sing all of those old songs that we love, because they brought us where we are. They brought us together.
Yeah.
We wrote most of, mine, really, we wrote so many of them together.
Yeah.
We will always sing them. It's just so lovely to like breathe fresh air into a set and be able to tell. This is a big part of like, you have to evolve as an artist all the time. So being able to tell the next part of the story. And there's still more to come. There are so many things that we haven't told people, we haven't talked about our lives and the adventures that we've had. The new stuff is just as exciting as the old stuff, and that's just sort of a give and take, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll always play it.
Yeah. And I think, for me personally, I enjoyed all the years as a side guy playing with John Hyatt. I enjoyed all the years as a solo artist. But for me as an artist, I'm a better artist with Claire. I'm a better artist. I'm a better singer. I'm a better songwriter. And, having spent, the 2 to 3 years of pandemic and uncertainty and lockdowns and all sorts of things, music really became a place for us to connect, on a deeper level. Writing, keep going, writing new songs. Even though you couldn't go out and play shows, we could always write songs. And, it was something where we sort of realized that this was a dream of ours that was unrealized, and we hadn't had an opportunity to do it. And, our manager said, "Have you guys ever thought about being a duo?" And we were like, "Yeah, yes, we have."
Yeah,
and we would really love, we would love to do it. And so it was sort of at that point that we were like, this is something that we need to do. We need to do it now and not wait. And so that was sort of the beginning of us going, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so we just started writing songs, stacking them up. 50, 60 songs later, put those songs into the hands of Sean McConnell, our producer, and he helped us sort of A&R the record and figure out what songs needed to be on the record and what songs could wait for another project. And so that was sort of how we got here.
We also found out how folks decided to become musicians and then take that on as a career. Here's David Childers telling you a little bit about that. How did you get started in music?
Well, I think when I was born, it was just always there. It was everybody in my family liked music. My mom in particular. My grandmother was a trained vocalist as a young person. I never heard her sing because by that time she had been smoking like 2 cartons of Raleigh cigarettes a day or something ridiculous like that. But the neighborhood I grew in, everybody liked music. There were older guys played, different horns, and there was a guy down the street, older fella that played guitar. There were like bands that would play in town. There was street musicians. I remember one old fella. That's probably one of my earliest memories. This guy kind of reminded me of Harry Dean Stanton. He was wearing a black hat and a black suit, sitting on some kind of weird little chair, playing guitar with a harmonica on a rack, and people throwing tips in there. I've wound up becoming that guy.
And then we talked to Valley James, and she told us how she became a musician, a full-time musician. She had quite the road to get there. She said she was a late starter, but comparatively, you are a spring chicken girl.
Yeah.
How did you get started in songwriting?
Yeah, so I didn't start playing music until later in life. It was like my mid late 20s. I had gotten married to my high school sweetheart when I was 22, and then the death of a friend kind of left me with some existential questions about life and what I was doing, and so him and I separated, and I started going to school and just kind of living this new experience because I had been with him since I was 15, and eventually I dated a guy in an indie band, and he showed me like a White Stripes song or something, and taught me how to play a little bit. And so then I got the itch, and I took my wedding ring, I pawned it because I was in college, and I got a guitar. And so I had the guitar, and then I graduated, and I started college later. So it was, I don't know, 25, 26. I moved to LA with the intention of like learning how to write songs and learning how to play. And then, as one does in LA, I drove and worked all the time and just never really found the time to be able to do it. And so I knew I had to move here to Nashville. So I moved here really not, I could play a few chords and write some melodies, a little bit of lyrics here and there, but I got here and it takes a long time to like immerse yourself and find your community here, but it's such a welcoming community that I eventually just found my people after, allowing myself to be a little bit vulnerable and put myself out there. And then I started learning how to write.
Of course, one of the main things that we want to know is how our guests see a song from start to finish. So their songwriting process. That was kind of the big idea.
That's where we started.
Yeah,
yes.
that led to us doing this, is learning from other songwriters how they see a song and how they put it together. Both, and we asked them a lot of times, is it the lyrics first, the melody first? How does that work for you?
And in the beginning, we really asked a lot about prompts too. We were like, do you use a prompt?
Yeah,
not use a prompt.
Like,
what do you do? Yeah. Or you like get up early in the morning and write every day? But
so here's name tag Scott on his process and what he does.
So do you use like a process when you are doing songwriting? Do you do like exercises or prompts, or do you? And do you obviously then I'm guessing you do music and then lyrics?
I do them simultaneously. So I used to do it. I used to do what was probably a more traditional approach to writing music, which pick up the guitar and see what comes out, and then just kind of whatever I'm feeling, I write those words down. And I think that's a very common way to do it. Over the years, I've put together a process that's, I don't know anyone else that does it. I've read a lot about songwriters, so it's not, I don't think anyone else does it, but so I kind of have taken the work that I do writing books and writing other projects, I've adapted it to songwriting. So what I do is I start with about 1,000 to 1,500 word essay on one thing, one feeling, one idea. Like as an example, this morning I was writing about apathy. I think apathy is a really interesting emotion. Sometimes I have apathy, sometimes I don't, but I was just sort of all these different thoughts and ideas around apathy. So that's 1,000 words or however long it is, a page or so. And then what I do is I print that out. Excuse me, I don't print that out. I look at it and then I start extracting lyrics. So like single lines, like, oh, that sentence, that make a good lyric. Oh, that's a good, and kind of pulling out, extracting the good stuff. I make that into a bullet list of just like source material. And like, these are the things that I could potentially use. I don't have to use them all. And I may think of other things, but like that allows me to stay on point of what like the complete thought was. And then from there, I'll have a bank of melodies that I'm working on, or I save them on my phone. I have here's various melodies. Like, okay, this melody, this will work for this thing about apathy. Is kind of cool. So I kind of think. So then the two parallel roads sort of like converge together, and now these melodies sort of written in isolation, and then these lyrics written in isolation. Now the two parallel roads come together, and then the song begins to converge, and then I put it together the same way most songs are put together, and then I'm done.
That's fascinating. I have to ask, when you're doing the essay, are you doing it like, is it like a free write and you're just writing, or are you like doing it in like an essay form?
Right. It's so interesting. I hear the word free write a lot. Tell me what you mean by free write, just so I'm clear on the definition.
So to me, I mean, like, I come up with an idea. So say I'm doing apathy, and then I would sit there and write down mostly like stream of consciousness, like all the things I can think of about apathy, like how it makes me feel, what it would smell like, what it would taste like, and that kind of thing. And then I would pull the ideas out, kind of like you're saying. But is yours more of like a logical format?
Structured?
Yeah, structured.
Yeah, it's somewhere in between those. It's like I do morning pages too, and morning pages to me is very free write because it's very associative and it's just let it all out. So I will have already done morning pages by the time I'm writing my essays. So I would say it's one click above your definition of free writing, because I try to, it's going to be a chapter in a book or in a blog post eventually. So like, yeah, just there might be some structure. It might kind of ramble on, and it's just sort of, but I don't care, because my whole point here is like, whenever I write the essay, the only structure is, how can I solve one problem? It's like minimum viable problem. What is the one thing I'm trying to figure out? Like, what do I think about apathy, or what happened yesterday that's kind of bothering me, or like, what am I excited about? Whatever the thing is, it's like I want to have one complete thought on this one thing, and when I'm done, I will feel that sense of completion. And so maybe it's a certain structure, maybe not. Like I said, I don't care that much anymore, because I've been doing it for so long. So whatever comes out, comes out.
And one of our earliest guests that we've talked to is Garrison Starr. And she talks about how in the beginning she was really precious with her lyrics, and how collaborating has become kind of like a norm for her now.
Which is really cool. We had the pleasure of seeing her and Sean McConnell, my sister, my brother, play in Des Moines. And that's how we convinced him to be on the show.
That's right.
So going back to your songwriting process, do you have like exercises you do? Do you have anything like, how do you start to finish a song? Can you kind of give us like a rundown?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, so when I first started writing songs, they were all my songs, and I just was very precious about collaborating. I was very precious about it, and I laugh about that now, because I was trying to get to the point of, now I collaborate constantly, and I prefer it. I prefer collaborating. I prefer being a part of a team, and I never did before. I'm an only child too. So and I grew up in evangelical Christianity. I mean, I touched on that a little bit at the show with Sean. So I think I was protective. I think that's part of it. Again, I've been unpacking a lot of the trauma I went through in evangelical Christianity, and all that ostracization and judgment, and that I went through. And I think that some of my protectiveness about my music and all that might have been, just not knowing who to let in and who to trust. And
Right.
But anyway, I now prefer collaborating. And it's harder for me to get in the room by myself and write things, though it's been tugging at me more and more, and I've been giving it more due attention. Like, okay, I want to be able to do that and not feel, I want to be able to sit down by myself and, like you said, start something, at least finish something. I have that perfectionist thing of, without having the immediate feedback, it's like, you have to really flex that muscle to remind yourself that you can trust yourself with what you want to say. And nothing's the end all be all. Like, so what if you finish a song and it's not great? It's like, what does that mean? I get in my way so much about talking myself out of things, because what would so-and-so say if they were here? Well, it doesn't matter, does it? Because so-and-so's not here. So who fucking cares what they would say?
Yep.
Because they're not here.
Great. That's great.
This is about you, Garrison. Like, what is your truth? Who are you as an artist? And don't be afraid to show that, because I never was when I was young. I had all that bravado and thought I knew everything. And now, it seems when you have more tools and you become more evolved, you, in some ways, now you're in a transition of like, well, who am I without all that anger and bravado? Like, who am I? Just sitting just sitting in who I, just sitting in my own soup, with my own, whatever it is I have to give. Who am I? I think that's can be scary great. As we get older, And
I think you're right that we all get in our own way so much, and we're our own worst critics, and we got to let a lot of that go while we're emoting. And also Imogen Clark, and she'll talk about her process and how she's still in love with the magic of songwriting.
Thinking back to music and writing music, what would you say is your process for writing songs?
Look, it's funny with that, because I always think it comes differently. Like, every time is a bit different, which is probably why I'm so in love with it still after so many years of doing it, is because it always feels like magic to me. There are a lot of songwriters that have this thing where they say like, oh, I think it comes, like, I don't write the songs come to me and I channel them out. I'm like, I don't necessarily believe that. I feel like it's me doing it, and I give myself credit for creating this stuff. But it does feel a bit like magic sometimes when you think like, this didn't exist an hour ago and now I've made this thing, and where did it come from? Like, just kind of out of my brain. Like, this is really bizarre. And it kind of like the way it comes out is always a little bit different for me. Like, sometimes it's lyrics first. A lot of the time I'll come up with a title and I'm like, that's a great title for a song. I'll build the whole song around it. And other times I feel like a chord progression or a riff on the guitar will come first, or I'll be singing a melody over and over again. And I just think every time is a little bit different. And that's kind of what's so fun about it.
In this next clip, we talked to Jessica Lee Mayfield, and she kind of flipped the tables on us and challenged us to do a songwriting prompt, which we did. And we're going to tell you about that after you listen to her describe it.
I want to hear what you would. I was just going to say, since the two of you are writing together, like, you're both songwriting, it would be really cool, like, as an exercise for one of you to write like one line and then give it to the other one, or like, I don't know if you do songwriting prompts where you both write a song with the same title and stuff like that.
Yes, we do.
We do prompts, but that's a great way to do it differently.
One line. Yeah.
Yes.
There's some sort of name for that exercise. Okay, so this is what we came up with in our back and forth. We did this via instant messenger, Google chat. Yes. So it's not that great to start with, but this was the idea that we came up with.
Okay.
So we'll each read the lines that we came up with.
Okay. So where did you get the actual idea for
so my initial thought was the saying, honey draws more flies than vinegar.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
What the actual saying is, honey draws more flies than vinegar.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Okay. How about you pour a little syrup on the wound?
You found me there festering. You found me here festering alone in my room.
Actually, before we do this, so the honey draws more bees. Also, I was looking at the syrup sitting on my counter. So there was that. That's how the very first line started. Okay. So here it is. How about you pour a little syrup on this wound?
You found me here festering alone in my room.
Take it slow. I still bruise.
You can turn me black and blue.
I've tried to rip the bandage off,
but that sucker was steadfast.
I've tried to ease my own pain,
but nothing I tried would last.
So we obviously switched rhyme schemes there. So we need to tighten that up a little for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the chorus, honey draws more bees.
Talk to me sweet, bring me to my knees.
You have the salve that my heart needs.
Honey draws more bees.
With you, I can shake off the pain.
Don't pour salt in the wound again.
Treat me like the queen you say I am.
Okay, here's the part I don't know what I was reading before this, but
left field.
The pain will be gone in a minute with you. It's going to make any sense.
I mean,
and I don't know what I read before that
put you in. Well, we were doing it on Google Chat. I think traditionally people do this with like a notebook and they'll pass it around to different people. So it was fun to do it between each other, and it sparked ideas. So then today I actually
like the honey draws more bees.
I do too. I think it's, well, you fixed it, because at first I had it as honey, draw more bees, meaning like I was commanding whoever the you is
to talk nice to me, or
yes,
I didn't
instead
understand.
of honey draws more bees, which I like better.
Okay.
So here's the latest version. You found me festering alone in my room. How about you pour a little syrup on the wound? But take it slow, because I still bruise. Your words can turn me black and blue.
I tried to rip off the bandage fast, but that sucker was built to last. I tried to ease my own pain, but I just opened up the cut again.
Honey draws more bees. Talk to me sweet, bring me to my knees. You're the salve that my heart needs. Honey draws more bees.
With your sweetness, I can shake off the pain. Please don't pour salt in the wound again. You say you'll treat me like a queen. Honey, you've got to draw more bees.
Okay, don't like the ending right now. I love the idea. Well, I like the idea of the queen because of Queen Bee, but
it needs some work.
It needs work. It's not horrible.
No, it's not horrible. And I feel like it was fun to do this exercise.
Yes.
We can maybe go somewhere with it.
Yeah.
So we'll keep working.
And if anyone out there has any ideas, please send them our way.
Yay.
And thank you, Jessica, for giving us the idea.
And another important question we tend to ask our guests is, what do you do when you get stuck writing, or if you get writer's block? That's a word.
Yeah.
That was talkers.
Let's say the same thing.
No. Julie Lavery has an interesting outlook on this. Here's a little clip from her.
What do you do if you get stuck?
Yes, that is, I do love prompts. I think that they're fun. I think that they take you somewhere where you wouldn't like normally think to go. And at this point too, I'm like, oh, man, I feel like there's so much going on all the time that you could literally just like open up your phone and like the first thing you see could be like inspiration for a song. There's I'm like inspiration. It's just been like very readily available to me lately. I don't know why. It's like I need to write a lot of times just to get things off of my mind, which I think a lot of songwriters do. You sort of like use it like a bit like your therapy in a way. And so it's really helpful for me to like put my thoughts on paper. So I have so many notes in my phone that like maybe might be a song someday, maybe won't, but at this point I have like hundreds. So a lot of times if I'm looking for something to write about, I just go back through it. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I feel like I can write about that today. That works.
That's great.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people say that they use their phone like crazy when they're, coming up with an idea in the middle of the night, write it down.
Yes.
And in this clip, Sean McConnell discusses how he struggles with songwriting, both on his own and when doing collaborations.
That's a good segue into, do you ever struggle with that kind of stuff? Like on your own, how, what do you do about, what's your biggest struggle that you have? And then when you're working with somebody else, what's the biggest struggle? How do those two situations differ?
That's interesting. On my own, I would say the biggest struggle is it's more about getting to the space where the music can happen the way that it should, as far as like quieting my mind or leaving what's outside the studio and really being present. I feel like most of my work is just trying to do anything I can to set that up, whether that's like down to, I always have incense burning, what I surround myself with, the look of my studio, the colors I like, whether or not I fucking start my morning like I should with walking or running or reading that thing instead of picking up my phone. You know what I mean? It just all, which I'm so bad about. But to me, as I get older and the more I want to get lost in whatever this art is of songwriting and recording and all that stuff, it's about cultivating a life, or at least your day, around a space allowing that to happen, where the odds are better that can happen.
Ashton Barbary talks about changing up her experiences to get out of writer's block.
So what do you do when you get stuck, or if you have writer's block ever?
So sometimes whenever I have writer's block, I really just need to get out of the house for a moment and experience something. I mean, there's a lot of things to be inspired by, like even just going to the grocery store and watching people interact, or sometimes just getting a little fresh air and stuff like that. Another thing I like to do, I was just at a writing retreat a couple weeks ago, and I was writing by myself all week, like a lot of songs. And sometimes what I would do when I got to kind of a blocked position on one was I would go to a different song for a bit and kind of refresh and then come back. Be like, maybe I've spent enough time thinking about this topic for now.
I just love all of the conversations that we've had during the podcast. There's always some funny moments. And I just like listening to the stories that people tell. Like, you never know what you're going to learn. So this one in particular that Soren's staff of them Cooley Boys was talking about writing, but this was pretty funny.
Have you ever written songs for other people or in collaboration with other people outside of the band?
I thought you were asking like if I've written songs like for people, like meaning
that
like
too. Yeah.
I mean, like, because that's the whole game. I'm like, my friends like to joke. They say like, you're the Taylor Swift of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Just, because it's been a long road, and and to getting to the partner that I'm currently with, and a lot of like my songs come out of my personal experience and me wanting to process things, be the relationships or anything else that happens in my life.
And Ben Danaher on playing multiple instruments.
And our comments on that are pretty funny too.
Do you play other instruments too?
Very little. I play piano a little bit. I've got a couple of instruments here at the studio that I kind of like can plunk around on. If like I've got like a couple electric guitars, a classical guitar, a bass, but I would never hire me.
I wouldn't hire us either. So we are learning guitar.
Yeah.
Pretty much god awful.
So yeah.
Get there.
And of course, Jim Avett is the font of knowledge and of course of stories. So here's a little clip of him.
My dad got me a guitar in a pawn shop when I was 13 years old. That was 1960. I had 3 years of piano and about 3 years of violin before I ever picked up a guitar. I didn't master either one of those, so I was trying to do something with the guitar. The guitar that Dad bought, was $5. At that time, you made about $1 an hour. That was $5 worth. You can get a guitar at that time for $5. It wasn't much of a guitar, but it was a guitar. Nowadays, you make about $15 an hour, and 5 times that's 75. You can go to a pawn shop and buy a guitar for $75, but you're not going to get much. But to me, it was heaven. It was the nicest guitar ever. I was sitting there. My brother, who was 6 years older than I am, and still is, he's still alive. I haven't gained on him at all. He walked through. He went to Carolina. He was 19. He went to Carolina. He walked through the living room and he said, "You want me to teach you how to play that, boy?" And I said, "God, would you?" And I thought 19-year-olds and people who went to Carolina knew everything. Years later, I found out that 13-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and people who go to Carolina don't necessarily know a damn thing. But anyway, he taught me 3 chords. He taught me, let me grab this right quick. He taught me 3 chords, an incomplete C and an F, a 4-fingered F, and a G7. And I played everything with those chords for about 6 months. I never expected there were any more chords. Nobody told me, that there were a lot of chords. There are over 11,000 chords on the fretboard. I had 3, and I was really doing good with it until I ran into this song. Dream, 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 dream. And I was missing something, and I didn't know what it was. I got fooling around. and I found an A minor. And that was the prettiest chord. That was the best note in the world.
Another topic of conversation is genre. We asked a lot about that. The Young Fables discuss how they would describe their music in this clip.
So I know you said the new album is different, but describe your music for our listeners who have not heard you before.
We've changed that many times trying to figure that out. I feel like most artists do. Yeah. We've called it Amerikinda.
Mm-hmm.
We've called it
awesome.
I think maybe country pop is what we would call it.
Yeah,
you know,
kind of covers a little bit of everything. But our music, I don't know, started out more like our first record was very like, I don't want to say country, but like more, I guess, leaning towards that. And then it kind of seemed Americana, and this kind of seems like, yeah, you're right, like country pop, I guess. So I guess with any band or any artist, you hope that you evolve and grow. And so this is another version of us that we are right now. So.
And here's Matt Joe Gow and what he says about his music.
How would you describe your music for our listeners? What would you, I don't want to say pigeonhole yourself as, but what would you label your music as?
Well, these days it does get put pretty firmly in Americana, doesn't it? And that was pretty cool at that festival, because my sound was right at the heart of that festival. And usually I'm an Americana guy at a folk festival. I'm an Americana guy at a blues or country festival. This time I was Americana guy at Americana festival. I was like, oh, this is great. But for your listeners, especially in America, they're like, what's Americana? I'm American. I don't know what it is. But it came about as a term where it's a mix of genres, traditional American genres, whether it's folk, country, blues, soul, what have you, and sort of mixed together in different amounts. So some people in Americana veer slightly more country, some might be more blues, sort of soul. But the beauty of that genre is you can pick and choose song to song what you feel like, and it's still going to be consistent because it's all Americana. It used to get called alternative country. But that kind of had a stigma where people would go, I hate country, and thinking that country was that really slick pop country, right? So yeah, that's kind of what my music is termed as.
We also ask who our guests' inspirations are, and it ranges so widely. In fact, sometimes they say it changes daily, which I think ours do too.
For sure.
I thought the responses by Tanya Elizabeth was one of my favorites.
Yeah, for sure.
Who would you say are your influences?
Ooh, so many in so many different ways. There are albums that are influences sometimes more than like specific artists. I grew up listening to a lot of Celtic fiddle players, but they're not really who I listen to now. My teachers have always been big influences to me. Shout out to Daniel Lapp and Dean Marshall, who were my childhood teachers. That's a tough one. I'm a weird person in that way because I listen to a ton of different music. And I also have a weird thing about, because I have a lot of musical knowledge, there's a lot of people that I look to, and I've always looked to. I looked to musicians to have the answers to everything. So like I'd be like, oh, you can play the things, but like, oh, this part of your life is not working or whatever. And so then for me, it was very humanizing, and so I wasn't really idealizing anybody. But as far as playing goes, like when someone transcends their instrument and they're just clearly just communicating through their instrument, that's very, very inspiring. Just seeing people really integrated with their voice, with their instruments, seeing people hold a space that's really welcoming to the people, that's very inspiring. I know it's weird that I'm not naming names, but
I like this. It's
me
great.
too.
Yeah. You also ask about advice, which again was one of the main reasons that we started this podcast, was to kind of see what people would tell
up and coming
songwriters and musicians. And so it goes a long way to have our guests give such great advice. These are some snippets that are just the tip of the iceberg. So we have Augie Doherty of Armchair Boogie.
What advice would you give to new songwriters or musicians?
I don't know if I should be the one giving advice, but yeah. The best way that I think about it, and I just heard this from either, I think Johnny Cash maybe said this, was that if you try and force something, it's just not going to be good. So like I said, when it's not coming, I quit, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have any remorse doing that at all, and you stick your antenna up, you put yourself in a position of inspiration, and you write it down.
And here's Kaylee Matthews, who offers specific advice for getting better at the guitar, which we really need. Thanks, Kaylee.
I know. I wouldn't say just play guitar, because we are learning that as well, and it is hard.
It is very hard. We struggle a lot. So any tips for that?
I always tell people with technology, we live in such an amazing time right now that on TikTok, you can learn a riff, or on YouTube, you can have a whole lesson. So we kind of have things more at our fingertips now than we used to with having to take professional lessons. So honestly, just doing it and making the time is always going to be really what makes you better.
And Jesse Rubin, who we talked about earlier, had some amazing advice. So what advice would you give to new, or really any, songwriters and musicians? And we've talked a little about it, but if you're on the spot, what's your elevator speech?
You want to figure out what you want out of it. Some people just want to have their lives and then write songs and have that be a thing that they do because it's really fun for them. And then some people want it to be their career and their life. And you really have to decide where you are on that spectrum. I would also say if you decide that you want it to be your job, and my wife says this when people ask her about acting, because my wife is an actor, if there is anything in your life that brings you the same kind of joy, do that thing. Don't do this one, because this one is tough. If you really love being a computer programmer and that brings you joy, do that. But also, if you're going to commit to being a professional songwriter, you really have to be stable and grounded in, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Here's Mary Bragg with some advice too.
What advice would you give to new songwriters and musicians, or musicians?
Well, I won't talk to musicians who are in a very different category of musicianship than I could ever be in as an instrumentalist. But I will talk to the musicianship of songwriters, because I think we have a special relationship to musicianship, right? We are not the ones who sit in our bedrooms when we're 11 learning how to mimic Jimi Hendrix riffs, right?
Yeah.
But probably we're the ones that are a little too obsessed with everything in a different way, right? Where we read books perhaps a little bit too slowly because we don't want to miss any detail. We might reread a page because we think we missed something. Am I right? Okay, great.
Yes.
Everyone's nodding their heads.
Yes.
And so I think the advice I would give to that category of person is to really allow yourself to be who you are, instead of wondering what it is about you that you don't have, that you need to go out and find so that it can make you marketable or whatever, which is what a lot of people do. But I feel like most people that do that, myself included, when you go and look for some marketable trait within yourself that isn't already a part of who you are as a writer or as a musician or performer, it fails. If it's not authentic, to some piece of yourself, then it's a waste of time, and it's definitely taking away from your all those many hats I was talking about earlier, that, you know, when we need to combat our inner critics and say things to ourselves like, hey, look at all this great work I'm doing, you know.
Yeah.
Like when you're really not being authentic in those spaces, as you're writing, as you're singing, as you're playing, even if you're a bad guitar player like me, I'm a fine rhythm guitar player, but I'm not a great guitar player. If I'm not allowing, it's about permission, right? If I'm not allowing myself to simply be who I am and where I am in that moment so that I might proceed to the next moment, then it's in some sort of conflict with myself and with my art, and it certainly is slowing it down, right? So, you know, authenticity.
I love all of the advice.
Me
I love it
too.
all.
I love that we get the chance and opportunity. We're so lucky, and I'm so grateful that we have been able to talk to so many amazing singers, songwriters, musicians
that we didn't feature here, that aren't published yet. So
that are coming. We have a lot more things on the books that are coming up. So please stay tuned. Tell all your friends to follow and listen. The big thing here is this is our first episode on YouTube. So we're really excited to be able to go forward with more
YouTubing
audio and video, and not just audio, because originally we had planned to just do audio.
Yes.
That's how our callcast is set up. So now
you'll notice some of our fun outfits and our clips because we have just come from the gym, and probably 80%.
Yeah, 80%.
There's a couple that we just came from work.
Or we were going to a Chiefs game because we have Chiefs gear on. Several of them. And but a lot, I would say definitely a lot of them are coming from the gym. Yeah. And I think we always said to the person, whoever it was,
sorry to look like trash.
Yeah, we're
just into the gym. So we dressed up for this occasion
in our famous Sisters in Song podcast shirts that debuted at Americana Fest last year.
Right.
So it has been a really, really fun first 100 episodes.
It's been an adventure.
And I
would say more of an adventure than a roller coaster.
Absolutely. There you go. That's better. Adventure. I like it. Adventure. And I am looking forward to the next 100 and more.
And season 4 will be coming to a close in the near future. And we've already started on season 5. So make sure you tune into us. And we're going to do our usual spiel, which I haven't said for a really long time, which is, if you like this podcast and you would want to follow us, please follow us on Instagram or on Facebook or on
YouTube. We need you on YouTube.
TikTok. We kind of are on TikTok. And then we're not talking about that other place. So we are Sisters in Song Podcast. I'm sorry, Sisters in Song Podcast. All of the things.
Not sure why it's that, but yeah, just if you look for Sisters in Song Podcast, you'll find us.
Look for this. Look for the Sisters in Song logo.
Yes.
Yay.
We'd love to have you follow, and we'd love to have you on the show. So let us know, and we'll see you down the road.
See you down